Welcome to the Guerrilla Film Guide Podcast Roundtable Edition. This episode was recorded during the One Story, One Community celebration presented by Borland River Media and the Utah Film Center, and is titled, Oops, Well That Was Awesome, Being Adaptive on Set and the Joy of Failing. The panel was moderated by Kohl Glass, with guests Jacob Hamblin, Alex Woods, and Conor Long. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, you guys. How are you guys doing?
Good.
My name is Kohl Glass, and I need a haircut. I was asked to moderate this panel, and I've been putting a lot of thought into it, and I come to no conclusions as to how this should be going down. But I thought maybe we could start and introduce ourselves. Alex, do you want to start with introducing yourself?
Sure. Hello. My name's Alex Woods. I'm a filmmaker. I had Say the Sins playing yesterday, and how do we do this? What are we talking about here? I guess that's all me. That's who I am.
Sorry, I
didn't lead
into that very well.
No, you're fine.
This panel is called Oops, Well That Was Awesome, Being Adaptive on Set. And I think all of us have had experience working on sets, and if you work on a set, you know that things don't go the way that things are planned, and then how do you deal with it from there? So, tell us a little bit about yourself in that context, Alex.
Got it. So I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I grew up playing a lot of music, kind of saw myself as a music artist up until about my mid-20s, and that's when I started to get into both theater and film. And I studied theater in college. Never had any technical training on film stuff, so it was kind of always like this driving passion goal thing in the back of my mind, and in that way I feel like I've done a lot of just winging it in my filmmaking, a lot of just going for it, not really knowing what I'm doing at all, which obviously lends itself to a lot of mistakes and having to reshoot and do things like that. So there's no specific examples jumping out at me, but I'm sure as we get to talking, I'll have a lot to say about having no technical knowledge, going into it, but also understanding that play is a big part of it for me, like having fun in the art form. That's me.
Cool. Thank you. Conor, do you want to go next? We just saw Conor's film. Previous to that, you just got off your Q&A. Now, thanks for coming here.
Yeah, I didn't have to go very far. No
yeah,
worries.
You just stayed right on. Give us the same thing.
So I'm a filmmaker from Utah. I live in LA now, mostly focused on writing, directing, and animating. I've been making movies a while, and I definitely know why they wanted me to be on this group. I've been through the ringer as far as like shit going wrong. I've had producers go missing in Cambodia on a documentary. I burned down a forest in Latvia during a production. I've had a lead actor pass away before we finished shooting the movie. So I've been through it, and I urge you to always be prepared for the inevitable. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. How's it going?
Thank you. Jacob, why don't you tell us a little bit about the same thing?
All right, yeah. So I'm Utah, filmmaker in Utah as well. It's kind of grew up watching movies with my dad. Always have a passion for film. Saw my sister doing kind of like film classes in high school. So when I came into high school, I just didn't know too much. I was just knew that I loved films. I knew that I wanted to do so. I don't know. I didn't exactly know exactly what I wanted to do. So I just kind of jumped into it. Met some of my greatest friends through that at high school that also loved film. Learned a lot there. Not like anything, too technical, I guess, as a lot of other people would say. And then we've made a bunch of, short films. We've definitely failed quite a bit as well. We've definitely learned a lot. But yeah, I do usually writing and directing. I'm going to UVU for digital media right now, working on that. So yeah, this is a great panel. I mean, I definitely every filmmaker has this experience with, everything. Like you said, nothing technically always goes right, and I definitely got some great stuff that that we've had to battle in the past. But honestly, looking back at it, through all the other failures that we've had, I'm very glad for it. So I think actually failing as a filmmaker is one of the it's taught me more than I've learned from like schooling and all the other passive stuff, but just by just doing it. So the failing part has actually been a great, as much as it sucked in the moment, it's been great in the long run.
Nice. Thank you so much. There is a famous quote that I can't really find who it truly is attributed to. It's attributed to a lot of people, but the quote is, "No plan survives first contact with the enemy." Right? And then Dwight D. Eisenhower said along the same lines, "In preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." And I kind of feel like that's going to be the theme of this panel. I want to lead us off by telling a story from my own, and then I'm going to ask you guys if you have stories similar to this. When I was shooting my second feature, You May Now Kill the Bride, it was for Lifetime. We were shooting, on the final day, we were shooting the climax of the film, which I will just say right now is never a good idea. I don't think you should ever shoot the climax of the film on the last day of shooting, mainly for this exact reason. And that is, I don't remember exactly what was going on. We were shooting in a bed and breakfast in a room, and we were just kind of like losing the day. It was just like very obvious that we were losing the day very early, to the point where we were like, we're 1 hour behind, we're 2 hours behind, we're 3 hours behind. And I remember we waited around for a lot of people. Again, I don't remember exactly what was going on, but it got to the point where we were looking out at being 4 hours over our time. And, you could just feel the weight of that on everyone. I felt it, the producers felt it, we were all feeling it pretty strongly, and it was really discouraging. And here we were trying to shoot the climax. It was a big fight. There was stunts and there was all this stuff. There was also a huge chunk of dialogue. And as we were sitting around trying to figure out what we could do to like try to mitigate the loss that we were having, I realized that I should probably start with saying that whole day, the actors kept on coming up to me and being like, the dialogue in this scene, I don't really like it. All I'm doing is saying everything, like I'm just summing up the whole movie. And my two actresses were both telling me that. They were just like, I don't get it. Now, I did not write the screenplay. The producers had written it. So it wasn't an easy, just cut that line out. It was kind of like, just say it and then we'll have it for the edit, But suddenly I realized that if I cut out the dialogue that my actresses were having problems with, I could lose 3 pages. 3 pages of like, yeah, I knew you were the one who was behind this. Well, you're right, I did do this, but I only did it because of this. Stuff that was really obvious through the story. And so I remember turning to the producer and being like, I think we can cut pages, 90 through 93 out. And she looked at it for a second, and then she's like, let me make a phone call. And we made the phone call. Now, we obviously, cutting 3 pages, we were so far behind, cutting 3 pages wasn't going to save the day. We went in overtime. But it helped us not go into further overtime. And also, I feel pretty confident that dialogue would have been cut in the edit anyway, because like we said, it was superfluous. So in that way, I think that we kind of saved ourselves a little bit. Like I said, I don't recommend ever trying to shoot the climax on the last day, because had we shot it another day, we might have been able to like move stuff around and shot it right instead of rushed it. But we were able to find a thing, thanks to my actresses kind of talking about how they didn't like certain lines. We were able to kind of like salvage it a little bit. So I think that's kind of like what we're talking about. Like, oops, that was awesome. Whatever. Does anyone else have a story like that? Something that's on set? Connor, you're nodding your head. You want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that happened, that kind of stuff, sort of like losing daylight or, going over. And I think creative problem solving is the most important skill that filmmakers can have, because you're going to get problems, and your attitude about how you approach those solutions is everything, and how creatively you can solve them quickly is everything. I guess the biggest one would be on, I mentioned it briefly, kind of, on my first feature, Point B, we, the sci-fi comedy, like I said, our lead actor passed away right before we had the ending shot, and we had to kind of like rewrite the movie, the ending, and do like a few pickup days to shoot around it. And we basically had to find a way to make the character get the complete his arc and get what he needed out of the story without him being there, which was, all in all, it actually kind of worked, but not ideal, like obviously. Yeah. But there's always a solution. That's my bad things happening on set mantra is there's always a solution. You can always find something, no matter what. You chop 3 pages out of the end, or find a way to validate a character without them actually being there. Like, there's always a solution.
Yeah. Jacob or Alex, you guys got a story that you want to share about something happening on set that you had to adapt to?
Yeah, sure. So for kind of the very first big project that I did, it's called Out of the Dark, and it was this kind of 45-minute short that me and my crew made. And it was kind of our first, jumping from like 10, like sometimes 15-minute kind of stuff to like 45 minutes. And oh boy, so many things happened in this film that we had to learn from. It definitely was a struggle. I mean, out of the biggest, kind of mess up of the project, we were actually 2 things. First off, never, kind of like you were saying, don't shoot the climax on the end, or the last day. Don't shoot the end scene on your first take. Never do that. We definitely learned that the hard way. So don't shoot your last scene on the first day. that's a
Just don't shoot the last scene.
yeah. Just it was bad. So the biggest problem though is we were 2 days. Yeah, we had 2 more days left of filming, and we were on the we were just kind of on the like, it's finally done. We've done it. We have passed all these many small difficulties. We're done. And my editor and cinematographer, my good friend, he unfortunately, and I things happen. Unfortunately, he was moving the footage, all the footage, everything that we had compiled onto another drive. He was doing all this stuff, and he formatted the wrong drive, and he deleted every single shot, everything that we had ever filmed in I don't know how long of a time. I don't even remember how many days we spent on this film. Anyway, though, deleted everything, completely gone, and I was there when it happened. I was actually in the basement, and he was too afraid to come and tell me. So I went that whole first day not even knowing, and as we're filming, and he's kind of in a bad mood, and I don't know what's going on, but we're just trying to power through it. So turns out, luckily his dad kind of knows some software stuff, and we pretty much just went ham on like, we got to figure out how to get this stuff back. So luckily, through the grace of God, we were able to pull about 80% of the footage back off that drive. And I mean, it was like the most scattered, like, some of you get halfway through the clip and it would just cut out, or the audio was missing. So it made editing just a complete nightmare on top of that. So the editing process went way longer than it could have. And there were a lot of times where we just like, should we even continue? And because after all the small and kind of big things that happened through the set of everything kind of suddenly going kaput, that was kind of like the last straw, like, is this even worth it at this point? So through it all, we ended up finishing it because it was just kind of like that, we learned a lot from this, and we're not going to learn kind of like the last chapter of it if we don't finish it. So we powered through it. We powered through the sloppy, whatever was left of the corrupted media. And we were able to salvage and still pull off a lot of what the movie intended to be. Now, let alone there was that 20% that I do wish that we could have. But looking back at it, I mean, that whole, like, that first, because to me, that was like my first, like, big learning thing was that movie. And as much as, like, that sucked, and specifically, like, that big hiccup, like, shoot, what do we do now? How do we tell everyone this? How do we even, like, edit this now? I'm actually really grateful because, one, me and my crew have become a lot stronger because of that. We've worked a lot better because of that. We definitely know how to store stuff better, so the files, and keep that all organized. Backups are, my editor, my friend Tyler, man, gets sick every time. I'm like, have you backed this up like 3 or 4 times? He gets sick of it, but I'm like, I don't want to replicate that ever again. But I'm actually, as weird as it sounds, it still sounds weird to me saying it, but I am glad that it, some case did happen, because I did learn a lot from that, and I use that past stuff every time I go into my next project. I'm like, I always sit down with my crew. I'm like, what did we do wrong from the last thing? What can we learn from that? What can we do better? And it's definitely made us improve as filmmakers in the long run.
Yeah, that's a great story. It has been my experience that it's always worth pushing on. It's always worth going on. There was one time where I didn't like the edit that the producers did, and so I got permission to do a director's cut, but somehow the proxies and the raw weren't named the same. So I had to go through and align all of the things. And I remember somebody walked in and he's like, is this worth it? And it's like, yeah, man, like, this is why we do this, right? It's worth it. You run into crap, but it's worth it. That's why we do it.
Was that a feature that you had to do that on?
No, yeah, it was like a 20-minute TV episode, 25 minutes. So yeah, I wasn't doing thousands of clips. I was doing hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex, you got something for us you want to tell us?
Sure. I'm just trying to think of something on my first movie, Say the Sins, just in the case that somebody here watching saw it. It being my first movie, I really was just going in blind. And I had big plans for the whole scene. But what ended up happening was we had planned to shoot on like a gimbal, basically, and the gimbal kept malfunctioning. And so what we did instead was just sticks and got coverage. And I was kind of bummed, but I was also sort of like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I just want to capture this so I have something, you know. And then, of course, I get to editing, and I'm like, this is so boring. And even when I watch it now, I'm kind of sad because it really is just back and forth, side, side, side. And I wanted to do so much more, like, long one-er type things where, like, we start on her shoes, and then we come up to her praying her hands, and, like, all these different things. And I just didn't get to do it. And then we shot the whole movie in one day. We shot all the office and confessional booth stuff at UVU in the deep digital media studio room that they have there. And then we quickly went up to the Cathedral of the Madeleine to shoot the cathedral stuff while there was still natural light. And that was really easy to shoot. And then luckily, I just told Jared, my DP, who did an amazing job, I was like, just get stuff in the cathedral so that I can use it for the credits. Which, that's all I had planned for that. And then I got into the edit, and I was editing this thing to death. I was so paranoid about it sucking forever. And I just was finicking with it forever, and I just was like at a loss. And basically what happened was I showed Christian Heidegger, who you know, Kohl. I don't know if you guys know Christian. He's a really great writer, novelist, local friend of ours, and he's always really good about giving feedback. And so I was like, hey, watch this, let me know what you think. And he had seen some of my clips that Jared had caught in the cathedral. He was like, when she talks about seeing cameras hidden in the walls, like, you should cut to that little thing up on the ceiling that almost looks like a camera. And I was like, dude, you are a freaking genius, and I feel so stupid for not being able to credit myself for this idea, because I feel like it's what's going to make this scene, this long-ass scene, survive, basically. And so, kind of by a stroke of luck, having gotten those shots and reassembling the edit, for me, it gave it a second breath, like a second wind, rather than it just being them talking close-ups like the entire movie, which would have been so boring. So really grateful for Christian for that note, and I agree with what you guys have said and what Connor was saying about there really is always a solution. Maybe it's not our favorite solution, but it's worth pushing to the end, like you said, Cole.
Yeah. We have, along those lines, we have a question from the audience, and that is, was there ever a moment that you initially looked at it as a failure, but turned out to be a great thing? And I was going to bring up, I think, the quintessential movie about what we're talking about is one of my favorite movies, and that's Jaws, right? Jaws, they were going to show the shark way, way more, and the shark kept on malfunctioning. And they just said, well, let's just shoot around it. And they had all these ideas. They were like, well, what if we have a part where they're shooting like these barrels into the shark? So we don't need to see the shark. We just see the barrels going around. And now when we see the shark, that's always kind of like, oh, that was, the shark. But the movie's brilliant because we're never seeing the shark until finally the shark started working towards the end. But is there anything that you guys have that you look at that seemed like a failure? Like, I'm sure Steven Spielberg was sitting there going, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. And now, turned out really well. Is there something like that where you can identify what you identified as a failure was now a happy accident? Connor, you got something?
Yeah. I mean, again, I kind of feel like that stuff happens constantly. Like every movie is just, there's tons of little decisions and moments that, no movie is under perfect conditions, right? And if it was, it's probably not going to be that good at the end of the day. And I guess a good example would be, because we just watched it, but in Mortal Coil, I don't know if you guys watched it, but the end sequence takes place in this like dungeon thing, which is very just abstract. The creature is we're shooting this scene where there's a monster in this girl's closet, and we had to build this closet to fit the monster and stuff. And we kept shooting right in this tiny little area. And I remember at the end of one day, the next day we were going to shoot the like final scene, the climactic moment or whatever. And I was just like, this closet is dumb. It looks boring. Like, and we've already shot here. Like, so I was just like, we're wrapping, we're going to call it for today, and we're going to find a solution. And the next day we moved the creature down to this like dungeon thing and that we found. And so during that scene, the girl opens the closet, and instead of the normal closet being there, it's just this like endless dungeon thing. And she walks in, and it's abstract, but it looks so much cooler, and it like hits the depth of like the emotion a little bit better. And we weren't planning on it, but I just realized that we were going to fail if we just kept shooting in the tiny little awkward space where we couldn't get any good coverage anyway. And then it turned out to be one of the more interesting, like, looking parts of the movie, I think. Yeah, like that wasn't planned from the get-go.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I know that there's like you said, this happens so much that I'm having a hard time. Like, oh yes, I cannot remember a specific.
Yeah.
When I'm just like, this just happened to, like this. Oh shoot, somebody needs to wear a hat, and we'll put the hat on, and suddenly the hat can mean something else. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. I just, there's too many for me to think of.
I think that's the job, to be honest. I think that's right. A big part of the job, is just being the one that can make those decisions, and hopefully your instinct is correct. And
right.
Yeah, you're the one that has to make the tough calls, and I think that's going to happen on every movie, on every scene, and you're just going to be, hopefully, your heart's in the right spot.
Yeah, Alex, did you want to say something?
I've got a little story, but you finish your thought first. Oh, okay. Should I go? I'll go.
Go for it.
I was just going to tell a story about my second movie that I made with my friend Sean Saunders. We co-directed it. And for some reason, we thought it would be a good idea to drive up to Washington and shoot 2 days out there in forest, because we wanted the stark contrast, especially for our Utah audience, for when our characters come out of this office building that's all we've seen in the movie so far. They open the door, it's just like lush green forests everywhere. And problem is, we didn't have any money to like go up there and location scout. And so I was like, crap, like how are we gonna do this? And luckily my uncle was up there, and I called him. I was like, hey, he's like really into mountain biking. I was like, could you just like ride around And if you find a place that's like pretty accessible with like a big truck, and if there's not a lot of people, could you just like video some stuff, you know? So he was our location scout, riding around with like a GoPro on his helmet. Like, what do you think of this place? You know, it was like, I guess we'll try that. It looks okay, you know? And then we got there, and we went to like 4 or 5 different options that he presented us, and all of them had their own different problems. And, you know, we only had like 48 hours to shoot our movie and then get back to Utah so that people could go to work, you know? I think that if there's definitely a bit of luck that we were able to find locations and use some of those locations that he had found, and it worked into the movie. But I feel like so much of our ability to adapt and bend to whatever the environment was presenting us was the pre-production work that we had put in. You know, like we knew really well basic storyboarding ideas and shot lists that we had. We felt super confident about that weeks before going to Washington. And so, you know, I guess falling in line with the theme of the discussion here, I feel like there's luck to these things, but also it's usually a reflection of your own investment in your story in pre-production, right? It's like I've prepared enough so that when problems do sprout up, I know where to go, because I already know what the vision is. Right? I already know how to follow the idea to the solution. That makes sense.
Awesome. Jacob, you got something you want to add to that?
Kind of like you. I mean, it's so I feel like it happens so much. It's so hard to kind of pinpoint like a good story, honestly. It happens all the time, I feel like. So it's, you know, it's the job of the filmmaker, which a lot of people don't understand. It's like, yeah, this is a problem solving, you know, job. It doesn't seem like it's gonna be like you could plan everything out and you think it's gonna be perfect, and you know, things change sometimes for the better, which is awesome when it does, because, you know, it's like this, man, I would have never thought about this maybe until I got there. So, yeah, I don't know specifically because there's just so many. It's just, it happens all the time. It's just, you know, natural.
Yeah, I one time we were shooting a TV pilot, and we were shooting in an office. And it was an office we rented, and so it didn't have anything. So we had to bring in everything and like dress it to look like an office that people were working in. And they had brought in a bunch of monitors, but no computers to hook up the monitors. And so suddenly, when we turned around, and I'm like, "Can we get those monitors on so it looks like people are like here working?" And they're like, "No, there's no computers. Like, we can go get some computers, but it's going to take us like, you know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And so I just said, you know what, put some green tape, give me a little X on the screens, and we'll do screen replacements. Let's keep rolling. And so we shot, you know, and then later in post-production, when I saw the price tag of that decision that I made, I weighed that decision in like 5 seconds. I went to the producer, who was a good friend of mine, who I work with often. And I said, you know, dude, I'm sorry. Like I didn't know it was going to be that much. And he just said, you know, your job as a director is to make a decision, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the right decision or the wrong decision. You just got to make a decision. Like if people aren't making decisions, then things stop. You got to keep making the decision. And I feel like I've heard Kevin Smith say the same thing. It's like, screw whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision. Make a decision, and, you know, look at the price tag in post, whatever. Anyway, we've got another question. Do you ever experience / how do you handle imposter syndrome or being too self-critical when a project doesn't come together the way you'd hope? Wow, that is a good question, because I personally the ratio of projects that I feel like came together the way I hoped and didn't is not even close to 50-50. It's way ahead. You know, things don't usually turn out the way I have hoped. But I would like to hear what you guys think about that. You guys, Connor, you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you say that because I feel the same way. I'm like 2 out of 10 are something I'm happy with, maybe. The rest of them I'm like, ugh. It's hard. It's one of the reasons why I was like, the joy of failing. I don't understand that. I don't know if there is any joy in failing. But it happens and you just need to, you know, deal with it. But do
you feel imposter syndrome? Do you feel like you're a hack that is about?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think
somebody's going to just suddenly the set is going to stop and everyone's going to point at you and they're going to be like, you are the one that's shouldn't be here.
Yeah, I don't feel that when I'm on set, actually.
Right.
Thankfully, I get into a very different mode when I'm shooting, and I take it pretty seriously, but it's usually when I'm like in post or screening the film. Pretty much every time I screen the film, I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, I'm such a joke. Like, it's hard. You gotta I feel like a lot of us deal with that, and I think it's probably healthy. I think you want a little bit of that so your ego doesn't get a little out of control. Because I know people that like their work a little bit more than they probably should, and that's not doing them any favors, you know. But it is hard if you feel like you failed to get back on the saddle again. But there's always another movie. There's always another shot. Just got to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's exactly right. I mean, I think it's part of the territory to, like, one of the things I tell excuse me, my classes is that, like, it's the ironic thing is you try to make something that you would want to watch, but then afterwards, after you make it, you would never want to watch that, right? Like I don't like, I don't want to watch my features. Like, I've already seen them. Like, you know, this isn't something I want to watch. But my initial motivation was to say, I want to make something that if I was at a festival and it came on, it would blow my mind. That's what I want to make. So, Alex, you got something?
Real quick, there's a Fincher quote that I like about this. I think it was Fincher, and he said, "The footage never looks as good as it does in the dailies, and it never looks as bad as it does at the end of the first cut."
Yeah.
Anyway, you go.
Totally. Go for it, Alex.
I kind of similar to you, Connor. I actually feel like on set, I usually feel confident, maybe like too confident sometimes, but I feel very focused, and I'm not really thinking about like my reputation or, you know, like what people are going to think of me for this movie, you know, whether it's good or bad or anything. For me, it's just like I'm laser focused. But outside of that, especially in post, even in conversations like this, I'm just like, dude, I don't know Jack. Like, I totally feel like an imposter, you know? And I feel like I'm going to for a long time. I would bet that a lot of famous filmmakers feel that the same way, you know? Like, it's just constantly you're trying to prove to yourself that you can do it. Yeah, no, I guess that's how I feel. I feel also like, you know, I'm thinking of that Wayne Gretzky quote of, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, you know.
I thought that was a Michael Scott quote.
Was it a Michael Scott? Oh wait, okay. I need to brush up on my office comedy. I that's the kind of thing that keeps me making movies and carries me through those imposter syndrome kind of moments. It's just like, you just got to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. It's fine. I'm an imposter. Sure, that's fine. Keep doing it, until you make a good one. You catch a great fish and you're like, yes, I did it.
Yeah. I think just going back to what you guys said, I think that on set is the place for confidence, right? Like, people might not know or care where the ship is going. All they care is that there's somebody at the wheel and they're going somewhere, And I'm the same way, where I'm just like, I get on set and I'm like, let's do this. This is so great. And then, after, like the Fincher quote, like after the first cut, I'm just like, well, let's start thinking about the next one, because this one is unsalvageable, And I know that there's a lot of, for me, when I work for other people and there's other people making other, like, if I can be vetoed by anyone at some point, then that really changes the equation on how, things. And I made, a lot of times when you're making something for someone else, like if I'm hired to direct a feature and somebody's written it and they're, they have plans for it and I'm coming in as a director, then, you always start off with like, I really, really just want to make great art. I want to take what they've given me and make it the best. But then by the end, you're just like, I just hope the people who hired me are happy. Like, I just really want them to be happy with what we did. I'm not happy, but that's okay. Like, if they're happy, then I'm going to feel a little bit better. Jacob, did you want to comment on this imposter syndrome situation?
So kind of, I guess kind of same with everyone else, kind of being on set. I'd say maybe not in the beginning, but like the more I've like, got that like kind of focus, like this is like, I know where it's going. I know what I want. I know what needs to be done. So I feel like that's gone a lot better. I definitely feel like, that's always good. But like, right after, definitely my crew knows I'm way too self-critical on myself. We watch some of our old stuff now and then, and they hate usually watching with me because I always point out everything that I wish that I would have done better. And I think that's good and bad. I know I do it way too much. But I know the reason why I do it is because I know I could have done better. And to me, that's a learning experience of like, I know how I could have fixed that, but I didn't. Maybe I didn't know at the time. Maybe there was a lot more going on, but I know that somewhere deep down, I could have done a better job. So I think, honestly, it feels good to know that I'm not the only one, because it does suck. Looking at yourself and being like, dang, like I want something, because I'm always striving for like the next best thing, kind of like, catch that, like you were saying, catching that fish. It's like, fine, this is a good one. And I want that. I'm still doing that. And I've caught some along the way that I'm like, I did some really good work on this. It's just something that maybe is good. And it's good and bad. You take it as it is and you look at everything and just, this is what I'm going to do next time. And this is how I'm going to fix it. But being, I'm starting to slowly kind of understand it. You got to understand that's in the past. You can move on and make things better, but still be at least, look at things to realize what you did wrong so that you can fix them later. But, even myself, and I'm still working on it, you got to calm down and realize, you did your best at the time. I know that you can do better, but you put in 100%. As long as you think, or that you put in 100% on that day or that shoot. And even if you're going back and you're like, man, I wish I would have done that better. As long as you know that you gave your 100%, that's what matters.
Nice. Kind of along those lines, something I think a lot about is a term I've used before is like having director goggles. Because as a director, whether you wrote, like we're all writer directors, but you know, there's been times when I've directed stuff that I didn't write, and either way, like, you either the first time you read somebody else's script or the first time you're finished your script, you envision what the movie is going to be, and you can get very excited about this vision. This vision can be very inspiring, and you're really excited about it, and you're just like, man, this is going to be so good. And then you go and you make it, right? And as soon as you cast anyone for your role, unless you've written that role for them, suddenly there's going to be a shift from your vision, right? Like, you're like, okay, I've just found, you know, my actress, and she's blonde and she doesn't have red hair. So suddenly there's like, well, that's different how I envisioned or whatever. And so we walk around with this vision, and reality starts creating its own kind of version of what we're trying to make as we create it. And so we sit there and we're like, man, this sucks, because what we have in our head is so much better. But the thing is that's director goggles. No one else can see it. So everyone's is like, no, that turned out really well. And you're like, you just don't know what the potential was. The potential was much, much better. And we've shot way low below that. And that's one of my favorite things, is to like put some distance and then watch it again and be like, oh yeah, like when I can kind of not remember what I had in mind, and now I can only remember what we shot, and I'm like, oh yeah, that came together. But that being said, there's been times where, like, my first feature or my first student film played at a bunch of festivals, and I had, you know, which means I had to watch it a bunch of times. And every time I watched, there was one cut where I'm like, that cut is too short. And the next time I'd see it, I'd be like, no, that cut's pretty good. And then the next time I'd be like, that cut is too short. You know, like every other time. And so I guess in some ways we probably should give ourselves, like, don't be so hard on ourselves. But also, like, if we didn't, would we be as good at directors? I don't know. We have about 10 minutes left. One of the things that's interesting about this panel is we're talking about how failure can turn into something better, right? And I remember when I was at film school, a guy came and spoke to us. And one of the things he said, I remember, like, I was like, this is one of the great things, is he said, fail your way to success. And I'm always like, yeah, fail your way to success, which means, like, I interpreted that as just like, do it regardless of what the outcome is going to be. But the definition of failure is very elusive. And I'm kind of interested in seeing how you guys see things as failures, because for me, I think that, like, you know, if, you know, like Jacob, like, if you guys would have stopped making your film, that would have been the failure. The failure wasn't that you lost the footage, because you guys kept on going. And so then you're like, well, then how do you fail your way to success if you don't define it in a way that, you guys know what I'm saying? Does anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think that it's the kind of thing where, you know, the goalposts for failure shift for each director at different points in their careers, right? Finishing a movie is not a failure, especially early on in your career, you know. But at the same time, if you're making a movie, like for me, I feel like my best looking movie is my first movie. And in a way, it was good for me on my second film to shoot it myself. I feel like I learned a lot about camera and light stuff. But the third movie I made, which is my most recent one with Sean, I shot it again, and it's like, it looks fine, but it's like my failure there for me was like, why am I not hiring DP? Like, this is not my job. I'm not amazing at this, and I'm way better at talking with actors and kind of orchestrating the whole system, you know. I'd rather do that. So for me, it definitely has shifted to the point of now I'm kind of narrowing my focus on what it means to fail and succeed. But, you know, this is also all outside of, you know, box office sales and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not even in that league yet. So it'll be continually shifting for me, I think. One small little side story before we continue on. I was thinking earlier when we were talking about the imposter syndrome, worrying about failing. Maybe you guys have seen this, but there's a great Josh Brolin interview where he's talking about being on the set of No Country for Old Men. And one of the Coen brothers like walks over to him, and they're shooting that scene where he's like walking out to the tree, the guy at the tree, and he finds the money. And Josh is like feeling really great. You know, he's like everything looks amazing. I feel pretty locked into my character, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of look over, and Joel is just like, this movie's going to suck. And then he like walked away, you know? And then of course that movie gets like Best Picture. So, you know, I think even the greats feel that. And that's that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That you hear those stories from like the A-listers too, like about imposter syndrome and stuff. But yeah, back to failure. I think that's a really interesting conversation, actually, that I think a lot of filmmakers could benefit from talking about more, is that like, how do you even define a failure? Like, because even if a film fails at the box office or something, but it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, it's not, is it a failure? Like for me, it's hard because the way I interpret failure is I have such high expectations, you know, like every time I go into a project, I'm always like, this is going to play at all the festivals, you know, like I set this bar that's like way too high for even like the budget or the resources and capabilities of what we might be doing. And then it just like, every time I'm just like, and then it lands on me, I'm like, oh, we didn't get in. We're the worst. I think it's about managing expectations a little bit for me, and like being a little bit more realistic about what audience the film can reach and probably should reach, as opposed to just being like, oh, I made this comedy sketch, it's probably going to win an Oscar, you know?
Yeah, I have kind of a rubric that I go through that I've developed to kind of maintain my sanity. And it's always like, you know, did I pay my bills? Did I have fun shooting it? You know, regardless of how it turned out, did I have fun on set? Like, did I feel fulfilled while I was making it? Do I want to show it to someone now or is it something that I feel creatively represents me? Even though there's these things where I'm like, yeah, I did have fun. I don't want to show it to anyone. I did pay my bills. Like,
that's really healthy. I think.
Is it going to be a stepping stone? You know, will it be a stepping stone for a future project? No, that's okay, because I paid my bills and I had fun. So that's okay. You know. Okay. So we have 2 minutes. Jacob, you didn't comment on that. You want to tell us just a little bit about what's next for you? What do you got going on?
So what's going on? I guess we're in the process of getting a film started pretty soon here called Casualty of War. It's kind of post-Vietnam War, kind of 1970s kind of movie. Just a short film that we're starting off pretty soon with my crew. So we're totally excited to do that. Start casting, I think, roughly soon. I don't know exactly when, but I'm super excited for that.
Awesome. Connie, you want to tell us what you got next?
I am currently just reading through all the features that I've written over the last 10 years and trying to see if any of them are any good or worth making, and then we'll see what happens. But I'm definitely getting excited about making another movie. It's been like a year and a half or 2 years probably. So
awesome. Alex?
I'm working on a short film in pre-production for a short film right now called Nothing New Under the Sun, and it's a guy having a conversation with Vivian Meyer, the street photographer, and that'll probably happen first week of September is when we'll shoot that. Hoping to finish that this year, and then also been working on a feature most of this summer. Trying to wrap that up and package it in a way that I can start talking to people. That's me. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's it. You guys this has been a great panel. I appreciate you joining us and all the comments. And thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Paul.
guys.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you guys.
See ya.
Yeah.